Welcome back to Geeks and Grounds, a monthly game club and weekly podcast where we play games and brew good conversation together. My name is Jenny Wyndham.
And I'm Joel Thomas.
And I'm ready to go ghost hunting, Joel. I think I have 3 places I want us to go scope out, but we only have time for 2, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay, you've already triggered me. So many thoughts on this section. I'm very excited to be hunting ghosts with you in our exploration of Night in the Woods.
Yeah, so for folks either fresh to the podcast or if you need a reminder, we are a monthly game club. This month we are playing Night in the Woods. This is part 3 in our 4-part series on Night in the Woods. So if you have missed the first few and you'd like to start the journey from the beginning, I would say go back a couple episodes because that's where we begin. But today we're going to be talking about part 3, The Longest Fall, or The Long Fall. I forget if I wrote that. Did I write that down correctly? The Longest Fall? I don't know. Something about long, something about fall. Yeah. And so we're going to be going through that section beat by beat, but also adding our thoughts, commentary, and just general feelings and reflections on what happened as we played.
Things are going to get creepy.
Yeah, it's perfect. We're heading into October, so this is like the nice transition game into what we're going to be playing next month, which, by the way, as a side announcement, this week's newsletter, if you're listening to the episode as soon as it comes out live, this week's newsletter will announce the October title. I'm going to do this sneaky thing and say, you got to click on the newsletter to see what it is. So be sure to keep your eye out for the newsletter in your inbox for the official announcement of the title. Of course, once the newsletters goes out, I will also post it on our website everywhere else. So don't worry. But if you haven't signed up for the newsletter, go to geeksandgrounds.com. That way you don't miss out on any of the stuff we send.
Excellent.
Yeah. Last bit of housekeeping before we head off to the pastry case is nominations are coming. So last year we started, because last year was the first year, we started a tradition. And the tradition is every year I'd love to have about half of the games nominated and selected by you, the community. So in October, I will be putting out a form to collect nominations. Any games that you think would be great to play together, discuss as a community, as a podcast, I'd love to hear it. So please keep your eyes out for the form. We're going to nominate games in October and vote in November, with games being announced in December. So it's a nice little 3-month cycle going on here. So just start brainstorming titles. When in doubt, I would say nominate it, because you never know what people may find interesting, and we'll have ranked choice voting in November. So the type of voting that we really should be implementing in, I don't know, wider governmental systems.
Hey, wouldn't that be nice?
Wouldn't it be nice? But drawing inspiration from the IntelliGame crew and Josh over there, we want to model the things we want to see in the world. So we're going to be using ranked choice voting again this year because it was great last year. So
just as like a word of reflection as you're getting into that, there really aren't a ton of parameters. Like, we'll put some guidelines in for you, but like, even things like timeliness, like we're playing Night in the Woods. This is an older game. We're really excited to play games that you guys love and maybe have been playing for a few years that we haven't gotten to explore yet on the podcast.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't have to be new. And it's always fun, even if we've played it before. I will say there is one category that I'm bringing and experimenting with. There's no game that directly inspired this, really. No, honestly, 1,000 Times Resist inspired this. I'm not going to hide the lead. I thought it would be fun to bring back a, like, I don't know how to call it, but basically a previous G&G title that we're going to replay. So it's like, because I think it's really cool to have the opportunity to replay something, and maybe we won't take as long with it. Maybe it'll be like a special, like, hey, this is a bonus replay episode that we do. But I think it's cool to think about replaying some of these games that we've gotten a lot out of and being able to get more out of them, revisit them with sort of not fresh eyes, but experienced eyes. I don't know.
Yeah. Experienced eyes. I like that.
Yeah. Well, it's like one of those things where it's like, once you've read something, like for me in books, if I've read a book before, it's like I know what to look for, and I start thinking about things a bit more less surface level, I guess. And I
Yeah.
think that would be really fun to do, especially with some of these, I think, really meaty games that offer a lot to think about,
I think
like
that
A Thousand
makes
Times Resist.
total sense.
Mm-hmm.
I love being able to go back and rethink on some things. This will be fun. Very cool.
Yeah. So yeah, keep your eyes out for all that stuff. Again, geeksandgrounds.com. That's where you sign up for the newsletter, and that'll have everything you need. And it is time now for the pastry case. This is our grab bag of topics, industry news, what we've been watching, playing, and reading outside of the selection. And we do have news this week. It's not good news. I am so sorry, but I think it's important to share because it's really impacting games right now in the games worker space in the games industry. The first is from an IGN article about Microsoft. This happened on September 12th, I believe, so last week. But Microsoft has laid off another 650 staff members. Um, the what is it? The tagline, or I forget what they call the subheadline, but the subheadline is "No games canceled or studios closed this time," which is kind of like cool, I guess. But really, there's 650 people plus their family members and friends who depend on them impacted by this, which is really really upsetting to see.
One is also
Yeah.
like, well, these 650 people were doing something. So if everything else is staying open and rolling forward as planned, what does that mean
Yep.
for the lives of the people that are still working there? And
Yeah.
that's so frustrating.
So this, I mean, I think Microsoft they have definitely surpassed the 2,000 layoffs point. I think we're actually getting close to 3,000 people laid off in just
Jeez.
this year. And that's simply from like the games area of Microsoft. I feel like in the other areas of Microsoft, there have been layoffs as well. So it's like Microsoft is just letting people go left and right.
Oof.
I think, again, this just reinforces the need for unionization so workers can be protected. I more and more feel like there should be some sort of legal um, stopgap for these acquisitions that keep happening because a lot of these layoffs are coming about as a result of these massive billion dollar, tens of billion dollar acquisitions.
Mm-hmm.
So this is just reinforcing something I think we've talked about, we already know, but just you hate to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. I. It just feels like we are living in a time that is really pushing all of us culturally to the brink, and I'm ready for some positive news. Do you have any more positive news for us, Jenny?
I am so sorry to
Oh
disappoint
no.
you. There is one more bit of industry news I have to share. Also, not great. I will caveat this news with the fact that I am part of a studio that is impacted. First, I'll read it and then we'll discuss. So, from Bloomberg, Jason Schreier on September 12th, which was the same day as the Microsoft news. Can we just like the double whiplash, if that's even a thing,
Mm-hmm.
of getting the Microsoft news? And I remember it was probably around, I don't know, it was in the morning. It was like 9 a.m. ish. It was early, 7 or 8, maybe even. I forget. I was up early and I saw it. Get the news. Horrible. Then in the afternoon, Jason just drops this headline: Annapurna video game team resigns, leaving partners scrambling. Megan Ellison-led firm sees staffers quit after spin-off talks fail. So, Annapurna, which is a publisher of games, they do not make the games themselves, but they help promote and provide services to developers so they can make games. Like they provide funding. There are 25 members of their publishing team. They all collectively resigned. Um, I am working on a title and working at a studio that is one of the studios impacted by this resignation. So I cannot speak in too much detail about it, frankly, because there isn't a whole lot of detail to be said, but also because I don't want to inadvertently say something and potentially get in trouble. So
Mm-hmm.
all I'm going to share personally is that Annapurna Interactive is still in business. Games are still being published by Annapurna Interactive, but right now, the statement from the new president, Hector Sanchez, is that they're honoring these contracts. They're going to replace staff. So Annapurna is not done per se, but I will say it's been very chaotic and very, I will say it's been a challenge to know what we're doing moving forward because there is nobody there currently. Yeah. So it's just been very challenging.
Oh, that is so frustrating. And these like major moves that are happening in these publishers and creative offices, it is so hard to quantify the far-reaching impacts of those big changes and big decisions. Like, you know, you're talking about Annapurna and how it's impacting the place where you work. Even it's like the Microsoft layoffs. It's like the far-reaching impacts of these decisions. No, it's impossible for us to truly understand when we're this far outside. But you know, I'm obviously really sorry that you and your team are being impacted by this. It really sucks.
Yeah. I think more than anything, I feel for all of the dev teams that are trying to figure out what to do. So again, biased source in that respect and for that perspective. But yeah, I will say. Oh, go ahead.
No, you're good.
Oh, no, I was going to transition. So if you've got a final thought, please.
I do have some really good news from the industry. Are we ready for this?
I'm ready.
I made some new friends this weekend, and when I told them that I played video games, they said their favorite game was Outer Wilds and asked if I had played it. And I think that is newsworthy. So
that is amazing.
There we go.
People still have taste. That's good.
As always, it's the community of the gaming world that makes the gaming world all the more special of a place to be.
Yeah. So. Oh, Outer Wilds is a very special game. Yeah. So what have you, in terms of good news and good games and things that we're playing and engaging with, what have you been up to in terms of just things you've been engaging with?
Yeah, just a couple of things, really. I think the first, I've started my annual rewatch of Gravity Falls, getting into the fall period. I love the like cryptic world that show offers. Really enjoy it. And I started a new anime last week, or relatively new, called The Elusive Samurai. And I've only watched the first episode. And what I will say is it looks like if Studio Ghibli did like a week-to-week, like shonen style anime. Like the animation, the color palette, the movement and motion on the screen. It's absolutely stunning. And I'm really excited to see where this series goes. First up, just in terms of like getting a feel for, you know, the style, I thought it was incredible. So far, a really good offering for this fall.
Very cool. What's the, like, is this a revenge story? Is this like, what is the sort of driving force behind the tale so far?
It seems as though you're getting a, like, almost like a historical fiction type thing where it's like, I think it's based on some real characters from Japanese history. And you're learning about this kind of young boy prince who his entire family and like royal family has been violently deposed and murdered or whatever. And now there's this hunt to try and find him. And it seems like he's going to be teaming up with a band of other children who are all, of course, like mystically masterful at their fighting skills to try and survive. But, you know, they have to remain elusive.
Nice.
Yeah, so far, really great. I mean, man, the first time I saw the lighting of the show, I was like, I feel like I'm watching like a Studio Ghibli movie. Like, it's just, I could not get away from that metaphor. So
really? Oh, that's cool. That's very fitting because I have been on a Studio Ghibli like kick again. Kind of happens no matter what. It just like every year I go through and I rewatch all of the movies. But there was also a documentary that recently came out. I don't know if you've caught this one yet. It's called Hayao Miyazaki and the Heron.
Oh, no.
Yeah, it just came out on HBO's thing. Max, I think is what it's called now, which is, I hate that name. But the documentary is this really interesting combination between a very historical, like going back to 2018 in some of the instances, look at Hayao Miyazaki's career, but also his relationships and the inspirations for The Boy and the Heron. So this like really interesting mix of like sort of historical information, biography meets sort of insight into the movie. I know The Boy and the Heron was pretty divisive among folks. I loved it.
Unacceptably divisive.
I truly think that it's one of my favorite films that he's done. And I thought that the documentary was really, really good insight into some of these motivating factors for him. And it was actually quite tragic. It made me cry, like tear alert for sure.
Yeah.
Because a big theme, and this was actually quite perfect to watch. I'm going to include this as like a pour over thing instead of just in the pastry case for Night in the Woods, because there is so much discussion of the impact of death coming to the end of your life and looking back, but also this idea of sort of ghosts haunting you and like pushing you to like create things. For him, he has this I forget if it was his, I think it was his director, a former director of his, who was like hugely motivating but also a little bit of a rival for him. And this director had passed during the making of this movie, and he kind of became obsessed, I think, with this idea of making this movie and using this director and this former friend and rival as this point of reference for one of the characters. It was really fascinating to watch.
I'll have to watch this. Sounds amazing.
It's really, really good. And there are some sections of that film where, of like the documentary, where I was like, man, I need to re-listen to some of the statements that were just like, I rewound it to just listen to him say some of the stuff he was saying, because it was really good. But yeah, definite, if you are a crier you will cry, probably. And I will say some of the cuts they did, like they definitely took artistic liberties with this. The documentary does a lot of cutting between Miyazaki and the interviews between old footage from the past studios and things that he worked on, and also old footage from the actual movies he's created. And they do a good job of doing that in terms of making it feel like he continuously is sort of dividing the world, or not dividing, merging the worlds of fantasy and reality and what he's created and what's like in his life. And I think they execute that really beautifully, but it is kind of jarring to watch because they, especially at the beginning, they do it a little bit excessively, and I wish they toned it down just a little, because like it was a little bit exhausting on the eyes at the start, but then they calm down once the story kind of gets underway. So but yeah,
very cool.
Highly recommend it. Felt very fitting, especially with Night in the Woods and like some of the stuff, especially this week, that May was going through. So kind of cool. And then my other pastry case thing is I got to see, I never know if it's Hosier or Hosier, because I feel like I had friends say both and I kind of switched between both, but I attended Hosier's show. Again, I think because someone was like, it's French, so it's like the French pronunciation. I'm like, I don't think he's Irish, so like
strongly Irish.
I don't know where the French pronunciation of this would come in. And they're like, no, it's Hosier. And I'm like, I think it's Hosier.
I did watch an interview with him where he specifically was like, it's with the R, Hosier.
Okay, thank you.
So there you go.
I need to like text my friend right now, because yeah, we were talking about it and I was like, I don't know. But yeah, I got to go. There was a concert. It was outdoors, and it was the Unreal and Earth show, and it was beautiful. So I've been re-listening to that soundtrack. And it's kind of cool because, yeah, it's modeled after Dante's Inferno. It's also about death and journey and grief and like letting go versus not letting go and what you carry with you. The themes are theming, I feel like, this week.
Would you say it's about like life before death, or strength before weakness, or maybe journey before destination?
Oh, interesting. Where are you in your Sanderson read, by the way?
I just started Rhythm of War today.
Perfect.
So I finished the first book. I'm doing the audiobook. So I finished the first one while I was in Colorado seeing my fam, and I'm on to the next one. And I am just like to your point about rereading things, I haven't reread this since the first time I read the book, which was like 2016, 2015, something like that. And I cannot stop listening. Like when I have to stop to do other things, I am like a little bit frustrated. Like I
like
was
right now.
like
are you
right
frustrated
now,
right now?
Jenny. No, like I was in Colorado seeing my family last week, hanging out, being Funkle Joel. You know how it goes. And literally at night, I would just like sit downstairs in my nephew's bedroom where I had a bed set up. And I would play like Super Smash Brothers on N64 while I was listening to the audiobook. And it was just like, these are the moments. This is real vacation, baby.
That sounds so nice. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I have not started my reread. I'm going to be starting Way of Kings, I think probably this week, because we've been, for Spirit Swap, we have our Kickstarter backer beta is kicking off on, as of this recording day, tomorrow, so Tuesday. And so I've been pretty much all my waking moments, I'm either working on that or I'm like recording for Geeks and Grounds. Like I don't have a free moment really.
I totally get that.
And so I haven't started rereading it, but I pulled the book out. It's on my nightstand, so I am ready once my evenings get free again.
Quick adjustment. I am on Words of Radiance. Rhythm of War comes next, I think.
Yeah,
so
I was gonna say,
book
is that
2.
Okay.
I'm on book
Very
2.
Good.
I did see on TikTok that starting like 3 days ago, you would have to read 100 pages a day in order to have the entire series
Challenge
read.
accepted.
By the time you get to the new book coming
Challenge
out.
accepted.
It's just wild to me how meaty these books are and how it's just like eating candy for me to go through them.
Yeah. No, my thing with books is I always wish, I mean, quality of course, but like I always wish books were longer. I've never said, I think this book should be shorter. Even if it's a subpar book, honestly, I'm kind of like, you know what? I like it when there's a lot of book for me to go through. So.
You and I strongly differ in this area, I suppose.
Man, I love see, but this is the thing. I'm the same with like shows too, even if it's not like, I know quality matters technically, but I will watch every season of a show. If I've started it, I will pretty much continue to watch it, even if I'm not really enjoying it, because that's just like, yeah.
But what
although I will say, this is such a throwback, but I remember you recommended The Boys a very long time, like many episodes ago. I actually started watching it. Season 1, very gory. But I was like, there's a lot of really interesting stuff going on here. Season 2, I was like, it kind of lost me. So I stopped watching The Boys.
I think that's totally acceptable. I'm actually shocked that I recommended it because I feel like it's not a show I recommend very often. I did get into a bit of a tiff talking with some people about Lost yesterday. They were like, we were having a fun conversation, which was like, if you like, what is the thing that like, if you're at a party, like a house party, and someone says something that like you will stand up and defend it. And I was like, if I'm at a party and I hear someone say that the ending of Lost was bad, I will stand up and defend it. And then someone was like, well, I think it was bad. And I was like, well, I think anyone who didn't understand it, didn't like it, didn't understand it. And we got into it in it was like not an aggressive conversation, but it was definitely one of those like, oh, I loved it. It just felt so good to talk through like the meaning behind shows and media. That's why we do this, right? Like it's such a fun.
Someone should make a club podcast about it.
The Lost Pod.
Honestly,
Pod
I have still not watched Lost, and that is like one of the cultural touch points that I'm like, I will eventually do it. I really want to. I feel like I will tell you when that happens, because you are like one of the biggest Lost fans I know. So yes.
Oh no. I don't want that moniker.
So with that, some notable releases this week. So September 18th through the 24th, we have so many games coming out that are all very, very good, or at least I think are going to be very, very good. So again, rapid fire for the podcast. If you're subscribed to the newsletter, you will get the links, the descriptions, and the general Steam tag / genre of each game. We have UFO 50 launching on the 18th on PC. This is like kind of a variety WarioWare. I don't think WarioWare is good. It's variety, lots of mini games. It's like, I think 50 mini games, hence the UFO 50. So good variety to play. Key Locker on the 18th on PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, and PC. This is like, okay, if anyone's played Mario and Luigi RPG, like that is the combat. It's like rhythmic kind of based combat that's turn based. But the story is about resisting the sort of state church police in a world where music has been banned and you are a band vocalist / guitarist leader person. Very cool. We're talking cyberpunk, like truly the punk of cyberpunk in this one.
That sounds rad.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it. The developers are very lovely people. So yeah, that's going to be really great. Spiral is coming out on the 20th on PC. This is a game for those who are looking for a little bit more of a, I guess, emotional journey. This is about a man named Bernard who is going through his basically memory loss, and he's going through cognitive like degeneration. And so it's about his story. I'm very interested to see what the developers do with it, but it looks very good. Frostpunk 2 is coming out on the 20th, PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. If you want to build a city in a post-apocalyptic frozen wasteland,
would be a really good name for a lipstick.
We're gonna bookmark that and come back to it
right now. Trademark TM.
Nobody else do it. We're doing this right now. As you're looking that up, Frostpunk 2, the thing that they're adding on that changes the formula a little bit is you now have like political town halls you have to help organize, and you work with different factions in the city. So there's a little bit of a wrinkle. You can't just be a dictator again. Like in Frostpunk 1, you could kind of be a dictator a little bit. Tiny Glade is coming out on the 23rd on PC. I think it's my most anticipated title this month. You just make cozy cottages, ruins, and it's a sandbox little diorama creator. Very good. And finally, Bloomtown, A Different Story is on the 24th on PlayStation, Xbox, Switch, and PC. This is 1960s Americana meets monster taming games meets a little bit of like a Stranger Things mystery teenager vibe. Like something's going fishy in the town, a little bit paranormal, and you're trying to figure it out. So if you like all of that, the pixel art's beautiful. If nothing else, check out the screenshots on Steam. Bloomtown is a stunning game. But yeah, as always, what's the report, Joel?
Terrible news for you. It is not only an existing lipstick, it is the name of an album from like a German pop punk band. It is the name of a book and maybe the name of a TV show. So we have... Dang
it.
I mean, parallel thinking that we got there on our own, but
my
you got there
$1 million idea.
Maybe it's not a video game yet. Maybe that could be your entry point.
That's the thing. Oh my gosh, post-apocalypse fashion game. Trademark. It's copyrighted, everyone.
TM.
So as always, again, visit geeksandgrounds.com, subscribe to the newsletter. You'll get all of the links from the Pastry Case and more. And now it's time to talk about Night in the Woods.
Guys, y'all, it still has not been one full night in the woods, and we are into the third part of this game.
I was thinking about it. It did not say spend the night in the woods. It just said night, and we did technically just hang out. We on the day 1 or whatever, day 3, we had a party at night in the woods. So I think maybe we could stretch it a little. It didn't say duration, so that's
you're
all I'm
right.
saying.
You're right. I'm gonna take a tiny L for this one. I'm gonna take a tiny L and just say I was wrong. There have been nights, plural, in the woods including your very, very first night. I think almost every part of this game has had a scene at night in the woods. So, okay, I'll give it to him. I'll take the tiny L. I'll take it.
Perfect. But yeah, I guess we ended, technically, if you're counting the days, this is like day 8. So we have had so much happen. May has only been home for a week. I just wanted to throw that out there for just a little bit of time context, because playing this game, for me at least, it feels like so much time has passed because the days seem so long, but really it's only been 7.
I think part of that is the and we've talked about this a couple of times, like kind of the cyclical nature of the days, and the fact that you do feel so directionless is like, if it weren't for the season being the same, it could be an indeterminate amount of time between almost every one of the days that we are like playing through. Like there's very little continuity between days that is not just part of the cycle of the day.
That's true. And actually, I did just kind of assume that we were always just going one day at a time. Is there any indication that maybe there was a time skip or anything?
I don't remember.
I don't think so. Maybe not. Maybe I'm overthinking it. But yeah, I assumed it was like we were going one day at a time, but maybe there have been time skips. I don't know.
I think I like it better if it is contiguous. Is that right?
Me too.
Continuous?
Continuous.
Whatever. Because it like, if it all fits together, then you are really experiencing that directionlessness in a very real day-to-day way, versus if it's like time has passed and it's like, well, how much time? Does she have a job yet? Like, what's going on here? I would have more of those types of questions, but I don't have those types of questions because I've kind of assumed it was just kind of a linear day-to-day thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I guess, did you want to kick off, Joel, with what does today's tasks bring?
Well, I will say, and again, this is where it's like I'm not quite sure the order that we experience things, if it's the same. My very first experience upon waking up for part 3 was to have a repair conversation with the mom. Was that similar to yours?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I thought this was like a really wholesome and pretty authentic repair conversation. Like, as a person who's had more repair conversations with my parents than I care to recount, it felt very real, where it's like, it's not that we figured everything out. It's not that we don't have issues anymore, but we understand where each other are coming from, and we've kind of reinforced that we care about the other person. And I think from that perspective, it was a very effective experience. So I don't know. Did you have any thoughts on the mom repair combo?
No, I agree with you. I think it was really, really nice to see this model of a parent and a child being able to have that conversation and to say like, hey, we're both human. We're both being really challenged by what's happening right now, but we still love each other, especially because later on in this section, we learn a little bit more about like other characters and their relationships with their parents. I'm thinking particularly of Angus. I spent some time with Angus and learned a little bit more about his family life. And it's really nice to see in a place where parents and maybe adult role models are not necessarily few and far between, but you are maybe up against a challenge to find really solid, like loving and caring examples of adults in people's lives, especially young people's lives. I think it's really nice to see that May does have that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I did not even connect the dots between the opening of this chapter being this repair conversation with mom. And I think I learned about kind of Angus's history with his family was like one of the very last scenes of this section of the game. I think there's a really interesting continuity there that you've expertly honed in on, Jenny. Well done.
Oh, shucks.
Oh, shucks.
Yeah, I'm trying to see. I'm looking through my screenshots. I didn't take notes because I had left my I'm very particular about the pen I use, and I had left my pen in the car, and so I just did not go get it.
Brutal.
So I'm like, I'm just gonna screenshot today. But yeah, I thought this was a really lovely conversation.
So I remember we went from there. We have yet another band practice where I yet again cannot hit the X button to save my life. I just cannot do it. And we take the moment to tell everybody about the dreams that we're having. And I gotta say, I think we've talked about this on the show before, that one of the things that like really annoys me in storytelling is when one character is having like an extreme experience that if they were close to people they would talk about, and they just don't talk about it. It drives me batty. And
Yep.
the fact that like we are now having this conversation, I was like, yes, creators, that's the way it's done. You tell people about the things that are on your mind if you care about them and think they care about you.
Yep.
But they were like, I felt like pretty understanding and supportive, and it kind of opens up the opportunity. B, at least in my run, B is the one who offers to take you to the library to do some investigating. Is that kind of a similar?
Yep, that's exactly what happened with me too. I agree. I think, again, one thing I've been thinking about a lot is even when you have friends or family or people in your life who are like not the best people, again, we're not talking about like the worst of the worst. We're talking about like people who are just really flawed, and you're like, God, that's so annoying. Or, this is like, I know they don't make good decisions, but it's about how are we still showing up for people when, even if they're not perfect, I think is a thing that I've been thinking a lot about with this game, because May is not perfect, but her friends are showing up for her. And her friends aren't perfect either. And in her own way, she does try to show up for them. So yeah, it was really nice to see. And yeah, we go to the library and we do something I find very, very fun.
Yes, I was going to say the same thing. Oh.
Go ahead. You share.
Microfiche exploration.
Yes.
So for those of you who have not spent a lot of time in physical libraries, almost every physical library has a place where they have microfiche, which is like they have taken records, be they old newspapers or magazine articles or scholarly articles, and they will take like each individual component, shrinky dink it down, and then underneath like essentially a giant microscope projector, you lay like, think of like a collage that's laying down in front of you with a camera.
So
and
cool.
You are moving your camera across the collage to try and like understand the articles or whatever. And we are specifically looking for ghost references. And this was maybe, I'm going to like, no spoilers here, but I think this was maybe my favorite mechanic of the entire game. I really, really liked this part. It was so satisfying to like, you're finding some articles that are related, some are unrelated. And when you find one that is, you select it and it's like, yeah, that's about ghosts and this is good. So what was your experience with this?
I loved it so much. I mean, I'm also library nerd kid, also history nerd kid. So like microfiche, like the fact that I don't think I've heard anyone even say microfiche in like a decade. You know what I mean? So this was just so much fun for me, just on a nostalgic, nerdy standpoint. But it was also really interesting because I think we learned some really fascinating stuff about the town, particularly the labor movement in this town. Oh my gosh, we have some revolutionaries in this town.
Yes.
And I think this goes all the way back to week 1. I linked this article about how we flatten and we create frameworks of Appalachia that don't offer full pictures of what actually happens there historically and who lives there. And I feel like this is one of those instances where I'm like, I feel like we're getting a much more interesting look at this town and the people in it versus like, these are just a bunch of hillbilly poor people, out in the mountains. And I think that is like, or in the mines or whatever, I forget geography, but I think this was a really cool opportunity and really well done opportunity for the developers to say, hey, we've got like narrative we're pushing here. We're going to find stories about, I think Lil Joe is the ghost that we kind of land on. But in addition to learning about Lil Joe and all these paranormal happenings, we've got some really good lore about the town.
Can I just say, like, the single piece of lore that was the most influential for me for the rest of this playthrough was that there is a gas leak that was causing hallucinations.
Yes. That is okay. I'm wondering because they we don't know if this gas leak is fixed. And also, even if it was fixed at the time, there's like sinkholes all over town, right? So I'm like, what if the gas is leaking up and May is just prone to the gas, and that's why these nightmares. We also are starting to see May have these like headaches and sort of passing out. I'm like, is May just really prone to the gas?
And there's like a sinkhole right outside of her house.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I will say, like, we learn a lot. So I don't want to like breeze over the like labor movement thing. There were like these miners, they tried to go on strike. Seems like there was maybe like an intentional massacre of these people. And Little Joe essentially is kind of like the voice of retribution, that people believe they've seen his ghost around town in a few different places. But I like, as the single piece of like, not about the ghosts, but just about the town itself, I was like, this gas thing feels so, it would make so many things fall into place here. So I'm not going to spoil anybody like the relationship of this going forward, but like, in terms of like my own theorizing at this point in the game, I thought this was a really important clue.
Yeah. Again, it feels that way, especially because it's like so out of left field, right?
Yeah.
It's like you have all of these things. The strike stuff made sense. We've already had lots of conversations with people about the labor movement, throughout the town. But yeah, this gas, I was like, this is weird. And so yeah, that's my running theory, is this is why this is a factor in May's nightmares. I think May is still also going through some stuff, but I think this is definitely being exacerbated.
And we do find out through this exploration that there are 3 places where the ghost is known to be seen: the graveyard, the history museum, and Possum Jump, which is, I can't not think of Possum Park from the Goofy movie when I hear that, but that might just be me. And if you haven't seen the Goofy movie, add that to your own pastry case and enjoy life a little bit, because it's maybe the best movie.
Really top tier. As you leave the library, I'm mentioning this because I think you haven't really talked with Selmers, but I have talked with Selmers, and I was wondering if you got the poetry club moment with Selmers.
Not at all.
Okay, so I wanted to read this to you. So Selmers has been making up funny little poems that I've been getting every day, and the poem that she writes for Poetry Club is this scathing critique of society right now. Some choice lines are, or some choice, I guess, like sort of phrases. Phone app sold, made more money in one day than my family over 100 generations. Damn. She also writes, world where house buying jobs become rent paying jobs, become living with family jobs. She writes, money is access to politicians waiting for us to die, lead in our water, alcohol and painkillers. And yeah, she writes, forced 24/7 entrepreneurs. And then basically she's like, I want to burn their Silicon City to the ground. Selmers is badass, and I love her so much.
I'm so jealous that you've gotten this playthrough. That is man, she's bringing the heat.
Yeah. And it's really funny because like this whole time you're like, Selmers with her funny little poems, like cute. I'm happy to support that and listen to your poems. And then she comes out with that and you're just like
tough.
Yeah, so good. So yeah, Selmers moment for the win.
So we are given the opportunity, now that we've explored the library, to choose your own adventure, if you will, and decide which of these areas you want to explore. So I chose to explore the graveyard and Possum Park. What did you choose to explore?
Those are the 2 I chose as well.
Yeah. Nice. What'd you start with?
I started with the graveyard.
Same.
Perfect.
And this is what I think where I learned about the sinkholes, because I wrote sinkholes and I drew an arrow to gas causes hallucinations in my notes. So we go with B. She offers to come with us, and we get what I thought was, you've played a lot more with B, so I'm going to give you my very like high level summary, and I would love to hear more about like how this influenced your game experience. But B comes with you, and you run into the same like goth teens that give you another quiz that like maybe they're witches like in a Macbethian sense.
Right.
But you learn through this that Bee's mom is buried here, and one of the reasons that she chose to come with is because she's going to visit her mom's gravesite. So I was just wondering, considering like how much more you've invested in the Bee relationship compared to myself, like what was that experience like, and how did that play out for you?
I think I appreciated seeing the side of Bee. Again, most of our hangouts have resulted or were completely at where we were at odds with one another. And we always end up fighting in some way. And so this was one of the hangouts where we actually did not have any sort of argument, I guess, which was really nice. It was nice to see Bee take this time and see her be more sentimental. We know that she doesn't have a great relationship with her dad, and so seeing that she still is holding on to this piece of her mom and like visiting her grave. She mentions being worried about the sinkhole problem because her mom's grave is on a lower side of the cemetery, and she's just happy that it's still there. I think we just see a bit of a softer, more vulnerable side to her than we normally do, which was just really nice to flesh out her character, make her more three-dimensional than she already is.
Did you get to stay with Bee while she was at the gravesite?
Yes. Yeah. Like when you can just talk to her. Right?
Yeah,
You can
but I
have.
was eventually like asked to leave. I was wondering if you got to
Oh
stay.
yeah, you can have like one conversation point with her, and then she's like, "Give me time." Like,
Okay.
and then you walk over to, what is it, the right?
It would have been pretty cool if like you had gotten to stay at the gravesite with her because you had like invested so much in that relationship. That would have been a pretty
Yeah.
cool moment. I was just
Yeah.
curious if that had happened.
I wonder, because I wonder if you have to have, because there was one time I picked, I think it
Greg.
was Greg. So I wonder if like if I picked all three, maybe I would have had something there.
Classic Greg.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I thought one thing, or I guess, were you going to continue after you go into the mausoleum
Yeah, but
area?
yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So yeah, the three fates ask you questions, like, have you done it? What's your most embarrassing moment? You talk with them. Eventually they let you pass. And you find Lil Joe's grave in the middle of this sort of clearing of graves. There's no ghost though. Nothing pops out at you, unfortunately. So you've hit a bit of a dead end, but and hey, I just had to. I had to.
That's very good.
And May gets a little bit frustrated and basically starts to jump on the gravestone, which causes a sinkhole to form
Naturally. Unnaturally.
And so, of course, with the sinkhole, we now see the coffin of Lil Joe, and we're like, hey, you know what would be fun? Let's open it, says May. B is like, what are you talking about?
Classic May behavior.
Classic May. Of course, May pokes and prods and gets B to agree. And so they're like, all right, let's open this coffin. You have this like mini moment where your hand is shaking and like goes to pull the coffin. And of course, when you open it, there is a corpse inside. There's bones of a little Joe. But when you look up, B notices something. Would you like to take that?
Is this about the hooded figure in the background?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So the same hooded figures that we have, the figure that we have been seeing as we've been kind of exploring through the game, and like we weren't really sure if they were real or not. B has also seen now, which kind of reinforces your concern. You guys kind of like skedaddle out of the cemetery. I do want to give a quick shout out to when you open the gravesite or the coffin, there is a hole in the skull of little Joe, and in the newspaper articles, I think they identify that like it was unknown like cause of death or like natural causes or something like that. It's like not so natural. There's a hole in this dude's skull. So
yeah, which again references back to, I think, what was it, the Possum Massacre? Is that what it's referencing? I think so. Yeah, so
not
good.
so natural.
So good.
But yeah, we're getting our
Details.
first confirmation that like the thing that we have been experiencing is not inside May's head exclusively. Like there are other things at work here that have a very physical reality. Whether or not they're a ghost, still uncertain. Don't know for sure.
Yes. So then after that, you go home and there's another dream sequence. I did want to read out a comment from the Discord. We Go Giant said that we're welcome to mention this, but one of his theories or ideas is that in these dreams, the musicians could represent the various figures you see in the star constellations. So if you've been talking to Mr. What is this? Chekhov? I forget
on the
his
rooftop
name.
with the telescope.
On the rooftop, you have been learning about constellations. And also, if you end up choosing one of the friends events, you end up learning a few more constellations, I think. So I think that's a really good theory, and I need to actually pay attention to the constellations and like go look back at my screenshots and see if I can connect the dots.
That'd be cool. I was wondering if they were the miners at this point, and that I will just tell you that theory does not pan out.
Yeah, I was also thinking because May mentions something about I wrote this down on my sticky note up here. There's a note of like, no, I don't see it. Basically about how like ghosts and things of the past are haunting her, and maybe they represent like people of the past. Like she actually explicitly calls out, I think maybe these are like the ghosts of the past of people in the town. So yeah, I love all of these. Like, are they constellations? Are they ghosts? Are they, what are they? But I think that's
Much
really
like
great.
the incredible show Lost, even when you get answers, sometimes you get more questions.
Yep. That's my favorite kind of game.
As I always say, it's just like Lost.
Yes.
So I do want to ask you before we talk about any further ghost time explorations, did you go on kind of a little mini adventure with Greg and Angus after this?
I did. But sorry, I mixed up the dream days. The day we go and hang out with B is the dream of the nihilist nightmare cat. Did you get that
The
dream?
nightmare cat. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, before we hang out with Angus and Greg, we have what I think is, the most terrifying dream of all, which is of nihilism. And there's this giant cat that you talk to, and it's just like, there's a hole at the center of everything. It's growing. You are going to be forgotten. The universe doesn't care about you. Your atoms are monstrous existence, which is a great line.
Great line.
So good. Like, I am not this god. When May talks about faith, they say this god is nowhere. The whole sequence with nihilistic nightmare cat is so good and also very terrifying.
Yeah, it was a creepy one. There were kind of like this eldritch horror termite thing happening in this sequence. Like it was I just wrote it's the true meaning of life. It actually reminded me a lot of The Bagel with Everything Everywhere All at Once.
That's what I wrote down too.
Oh,
I was
really?
like, yeah, I have my sticky note up here because I tried to type in some quick thoughts before the podcast, and I wrote everything bagel ?
Incredible.
But we also, okay, so May has been characterized as a chaos gremlin. I feel like in this scene, we see a little bit of her hopefulness because she actually talks about, she's like, well, what about the leaves and the trees and like the people I care about? And it's like, if May was truly chaos and lost, and like, if she was as nihilistic as this cat, she wouldn't have asked those questions. So I feel like you see this like sort of hope in May that maybe she may not have recognized was even in her. I certainly wasn't sure if it was, and so it was really nice to see that.
Oh, I love that. I had not noticed that. Oh,
yeah.
Very cool.
Okay.
I actually think that is maybe a good segue though, like that characterization of May and like who she is a great transition into the next scene.
Yeah, with Angus and Greg.
We're going on a little mini road trip to the Donut Wolf.
Yes. Yeah.
Place where you can go get donuts. And this is like, I think, a really important sequence as we learn more about the relationship between Greg and Angus, more about May and how she does things. But I'm also going to say this scene made me more frustrated than almost any other scene in the game. So
Let's dive in.
There's like some really interesting things that kind of pop up. Like you get a flat tire, and as there's this flat tire, you kind of walk away as Greg and Angus have like a fight with each other, and like you see emojis going back and forth, which was kind of a funny little sequence. And you get to the Donut Wolf, and eventually you start feeling really weird. You as May go into the bathroom, and you are feeling so upset that you just start like destroying things. And you have this like destruction sequence in the bathroom of the Donut Wolf. And Greg comes in to stop you. Then we have this sequence where you are eating donuts together, and we learn what Greg and Angus were kind of fighting about, which is essentially that you, May, are kind of a bad influence on Greg, and that he has become like really destructive and doing all these like bad things since you came into town. And Greg says something like, May, you have to let me change. And before we talk about like Angus's trauma, which is I think an important Greg's trauma, do we get Greg's abuse story in this scene? Regardless, before we talk about those, this bothered me so much because I have done almost exclusively Greg activities, and they have all been his idea. They have all been like, do you want to go into the back and blast, light bulbs? Do you want to go shoot a crossbow at this thing in the woods? Do you want to stab each other's hands with knives in the woods? And so I thought this was so unfair to May based on how I have seen these things playing out. Now, maybe there's like some untrustworthy narrator thing happening here. Who knows? And maybe it's just like Greg is only reverting because May is in town, but it's like May has not, that I have seen, pressured Greg to do any of this stuff, not even brought it up in the first place. So I'll stop ranting now. That really, really got to me as we were playing through this sequence.
Yeah, I think because I haven't hung out with Greg as much, so I think this definitely hit in a harder way for you than it did for me. Because in my head, I was like, yeah, May has been kind of this, if not the direct influence to doing a lot of these things. Like with B, she definitely is. And so I think when that line happened, I didn't really think too hard about it because I'm like, yeah, May does kind of instigate a lot of the stuff. But you're right. If you're hanging out with Greg and he's the one asking you to do all these things, not May, I think it is unfair to May to put all of that blame towards her, like her presence simply being that much of a determining force in how he behaves. But again, it's this like they all are, because they're all still kids.
Yeah. Well,
I'm sorry. Early 20s. They're all 20. Actually, no. May said she's 20. So they're 20. They're still young.
They're still young. I
so
get that.
It's like, yeah. And I imagine, I don't know. I wondered if Greg also, in putting it on May, because like maybe if Angus was like, oh, is it you that's doing this or is it May? It's probably easier to be like, oh yeah, May told me to do all this stuff, instead of confronting what you should actually be talking about with your partner,
That's honestly, that was my first thought. And it just really like, it got under my skin. It's like one of those things where it's like when a video game makes you take responsibility for the decisions the video game made you do and not the ones that you wanted to do. Like that kind of thing really gets to me. So it hit my trigger. But to kind of wrap up that sequence, you take the mascot that at least what I got, the mascot that we stole from the grocery store, we take out of the apartment and take back to the woods for other teens to find and do silly things with.
Yep. I think the only additional thing there, I did like that we got basically a story from Greg about sheep, and how this was sort of this parable that showed, he really wants to make sure that he and Angus get away from this town. I think that was, one of my favorite moments, because I haven't seen Greg talk seriously about anything up until this point.
Yeah,
so
totally.
I think that was definitely something I thought was really important. It highlighted the fact, you know we actually learned officially that, because I don't think we learned officially, but May is also queer. So it's like May was like, well, I'm queer too, and I'm from here. And Angus and Greg are like, but you left. Like, everyone leaves, and so we have to go too.
Yep.
Nobody even questions at this point. So I thought
Yep.
that was a really good conversation.
So I did note that we have like a good conversation with Dad sitting around the TV.
Mm-hmm.
I have just written down, I don't know why, arm of the man taken after death. Oh, we learned that
yes.
the arm that we saw was taken after the person had died. That it makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's on like day 10 or 11, like one of the last days of this section. Mall cop aunt stops us and is like, yo, I just want to let you know. It's like, that's weird. She did tell May to be careful, which is like kind of the first time.
What does she know?
It's like she's saying this, which is weird because this is not something you've said before, really.
So we kind of moved from here into like the last major sequence of this section of this part of the game, which is going to Possum Park
yes.
with Angus. And you get a lot in this little section. You learn about kind of the abuse that Angus faced growing up, like being intentionally starved, and like the physical abuse that he was dealing with from his family. And he like really opens up to you in this moment as you're out in the woods at night. Yes. But I just think a few things that I noticed. One, as you're walking with Angus through the woods, you see like kilns. And to me, those kilns look a lot like the place where the musicians are playing in the dream sequences. So I don't know if there's some connections there. You kind of stumble across what appears to be maybe the graves of the miners, which I also thought is like interesting. That would be noted, commemorated, etc. And you have the other moment that you were talking about earlier, where you start looking at constellations, which I thought that whole sequence, like getting to know Angus, was one of the most heartwarming experiences in the game. I love this section.
I will say that in this section, Angus says what I think is my favorite line thus far in this whole game. Angus is talking about how he didn't go to church. Basically, he joined like a skeptic society, and his goal was to disprove anything paranormal, anything sort of like out of the realm of science. And in this way, I think it's a really nice contrast and sort of parallel, because in looking for ways to disprove faith, he kind of found his own system of belief. He found his own version of faith, or I guess disproving religion and science, paranormal stuff. He found his own version of faith. But he says, and I wrote this down, he says, I believe in a universe that doesn't care and people who do. And I was like, that for me is the line of the game. I don't know what happens next, but that is it for me.
It's so good. And it made me think of Dimension 20, the D&D show. We may have even talked about this before on this podcast, but there's a line that Brennan says. He's speaking as like God, and he's being asked like, well, what's it all mean? Why is this place so evil? And or the world so evil? And he essentially says something on the lines of like, humans are not separate from the universe. They are a part of the universe. And so when humans choose to do good, the universe is good. And when the humans choose to do evil, the universe is evil. And something about that idea of like tying people back to our place within nature is such a beautiful way to think about the world and the universe, and something that
Yeah.
I will never let go of. So yeah, I'm so glad you wrote that down. I totally forgot to write it, but it's made me feel the feels.
It did. I will say this section got me choked up because I think Angus is also a character where I'm like, I wish we had more time with him,
I
because
agree.
I really like Angus, and like oh, I think my camera just turned off. That's okay. But I just wish that we had more opportunity to talk with him, because I think he has some really interesting stuff to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, we turn around though and notice something funny.
Oh, the stalker's there. The like cloaked figure stalker is there. And I just kind of like blaze through this last section so that we can just talk about it. You learn that Angus has asthma. You start trying to run away from the stalker. You make it away. You get back to your friends, and then all your friends together go out into the woods and start making their way towards this cave where perhaps the miners were, and they see several cloaked figures who appear to be in the process of committing murder of someone. So everyone flees. They seem to know who May is. They call her out by name, which definitely gave me that like goosebumps feeling.
Yeah.
And as you run away, kind of the last thing you hear is like a gunshot before everything kind of fades to black. Oof.
I will say, like, murder cult mystery meeting was not on my bingo card. I was not thinking that we would go into the woods and find a group of people doing a murder together, talking about leaving body parts around town. I was not like this. I did not predict this. So this whole time, my jaw was dropped. And what's wild is, okay, there was a particular section in this conversation that got me. And it was, I think Lerv was the person's name, who was like incapacitated and on the ground, knowing that they were going to die. And one of the figures says, "Don't worry, Jeannie and the girls will be like taken care of." And then Lerv is like, "Dave, Rick, Benjamin," or whatever. The person is shouting out the names of these people. So I'm just like, are these townspeople that we know? Like, they have to be from this area. And they're talking about, "We're taking care of your family, don't you worry." Like, I feel like there is. So now I'm just like, what does Mall Cop Ant know about this? Like, do we know the names of the council people? Are these the council people? Like, what's happening?
I did have this on my bingo card. I felt extremely vindicated in this moment because the whole time that we've been going through this, and I think it was actually the ant's behavior that made me think of this.
Yeah.
I have not been able to stop thinking about the movie Hot Fuzz, which is like one of those Simon Pegg joints, like British comedies, guy who made Shaun of the Dead, etc.
Okay.
And there is a movie where he is like this by the book police officer, like to a degree that it's comical, where he gets shunted away into this very small British community where it turns out, spoilers for everyone who has not seen Hot Fuzz, there is a community group of like leaders that do nefarious stuff like this because they believe it's like for the good of the community. And I can't remember what the whole expression is, like something bonum communitatis, like they have this chant they do as they're like doing these nefarious things because they believe it's like the like supernaturally good for the community. So I have been on the lookout for this for the entire game, and I was like, when we see this group of cloaked figures that clearly know each other, that must be part of this community somehow, I was like, this I knew it. Like I wrote Hot Fuzz down much earlier in the game, and I was like, I felt so good when
oh my gosh. Yeah, no, I did not see this coming. I think maybe I expected like one, because I also kind of assumed this cloaked figure, and we don't know if this cloaked figure that we've been seeing is the same person or maybe different people. I assumed this was like a lone person in the town who was kind of a creep, and maybe, and that was it. I was not expecting like a full organization seems to be behind whatever is going on. So
something's up.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know. Again, we ended on such a cliffhanger. I don't know if they caught May. I don't know if May got away.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we'll be talking about next week for our
Next
finale.
time.
I'm so excited. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And then we can also next week talk about, there's like additional side quests, and like we hadn't talked about gosh, why am I forgetting the name? Germ. There's some choice germ moments, but we'll talk about that next week as we summarize and conclude our time with Night in the Woods. Any thoughts you want to leave folks with as we get ready to wind down?
No additional housekeeping items for me outside of the normal, which is obviously, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while, we ask that you give us a rating, give us some comments online. We'd love to hear from y'all, chat with y'all, whether you're in the YouTube comments, whether you're in our Discord community, which you can learn more about at geeksandgrounds.com. Love hearing about you all. I've been giving some really incredible advice about playing 9 Souls over the last couple days, so I'm pumped to dig into that on my vacation this week. But yeah, no other housekeeping items for me. How about you, Jenny?
Let's see. I did want to highlight, and you brought this up because you saw the notification, but Caliste in the community did mention that one of the games that's coming up in the future for Geeks and Grounds this year, Slay the Princess, is on sale right now on Steam for 20% off. So if you want to, it's not, I will, spoiler alert, I guess, pseudo spoiler alert, it is not next month's game, but we are going to be playing it this year. So if you would like to pick up Slay the Princess, definitely go on to Steam and take a look. 20% off. It's pretty good.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us here at Geeks and Grounds. As always, we really value you as a community to the point that we would murder for you.
Oh, snap.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye.